Driving Podcast, episode 11.
11, yeah. Hello.
So we're Kat and Richard Bott as well, the same duo every time. So hopefully you're
not
getting
found anybody else to do it with it yet.
Hopefully you're getting used to us now. So what have we been up to this week, Rich?
So usual thing, we've been doing a bit of filming, haven't we? We've had a new camera to play with, and improve what we're doing there a little bit. It's been a steep learning curve, hasn't it? Putting all the films and everything together.
Yeah, because we've both been fortunate enough to work with other film crews, haven't we?
Yeah.
Which has been brilliant, but we've always been the other side of the fence where we're doing the talking, the driving, but not actually the then producing and putting it together and putting the music on. So that's been a real eye-opener, and it suddenly makes a lot more sense now why these film crews do things like they do, because when you're part of it, sometimes it seems painfully slow and the same shots over and over and over, but you actually start to realise why.
That's some kind of sync, but then the balls get bolted back together and it makes sense.
Absolutely. So it's great in a way for us, because we want to do more and more car reviews. We're getting more and more contacts with some really exciting owners that have very exotic, exclusive cars. So we would like to, share our passion with everybody else really on that and get people's thoughts on what they think too. So, so that's sort of all going the right direction. Yeah. We've got a junior driver for the next couple of days, haven't we?
Yeah, so she's coming to learn. She's getting ready for her ARDS test, isn't she?
So
doing some work on that.
So we're doing a simulator day tomorrow, aren't we? And then we're doing an ARDS day the following day. So she's very, very new, which is great because it's great to have drivers with different experience levels and start from different places as such. So having somebody who's literally brand new, you feel like you can really make your own mark on it, which is important, I think.
It is, yeah.
But anyway, enough about us. So, motorsport. Now, one thing I will say is, you might have noticed, we're filming on a different day. So we normally film on a Friday, but Richard had his COVID injection on Thursday. And got taken down by COVID.
I'm sure it's better than COVID.
It's not officially taken down by COVID.
It does knock me for 6.
Yeah, so what, about 12 hours later, something like that?
In the middle of the night, woke up and didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, and that's what it's been like ever since, pretty much, isn't it? So we had to postpone filming. I did consider doing it all on my own, but I thought I'm not sure everybody would want to listen to that.
No, I thought it would have been fine.
So we thought we'd wait till now. But the perks, even though this is a one-off, hopefully, the perks are we've got to see a bit more motorsport, so we can discuss that side a little bit more as well. So moving on then to Formula 1.
Yeah, so we watched the Grand Prix today, didn't we, from Imola?
From Imola, yeah, absolutely. So initially, what big talking points did we have in qualifying?
Well, the first thing really was the pace of Norris, wasn't it? You expect the Red Bulls to be quick, you expect the Mercs to be quick. McLaren seemed to have really got that car sorted, which is down to Andreas Seidel, and the team he's put together to build that car, and the fact that Norris has taken a step up as a driver. And I don't know whether that's the arrival of Daniel Ricciardo, but he's taken the next step as a driver.
It's almost like he now wants to be number one. He wants to start taking that leadership, and obviously he's a very young guy. And I have to be brutally honest. I thought when Daniel Ricciardo came in, he'd suddenly have his hands full. Now I know it's early days at the moment, and Daniel has out-qualified him before, hasn't he? But all that said, this weekend, Daniel did not have an answer.
Well, he looked a little bit shocked after the race, really, to be honest. He was a little bit like, well, I've got to work on it, and I think he's been quite surprised because they moved him out of the way in the race, didn't they?
Oh yeah, well that's the other thing. So qualifying, as I'm sure anybody who's watched it anyway will know that he should have been on the second row, shouldn't he? So he was going to qualify third. Lando Norris, and he had his lap deleted because of the turn 9 issue, which became a big issue actually all over qualifying, and that's a bit of a talking point, I think, going forward for the older school tracks. Do we need to have track limits?
Yeah.
Because they naturally have their own as such, if you think about it. And the only reason with turn 9 they can go slightly wide, and we're talking, an inch really, when you really look at it, it's not much. No. And that's just really a bit of understeer pushing on slightly. So not really for a gain. And everywhere else you can see it's you're going to hit grass, you're going to hit gravel. That's not going to be quick, and you'll probably have a shunt. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I understand for the modern tracks with lots of tarmac.
Yeah.
that you've got to, manage that more with track limits because there's just so much extra tarmac on the edges. But I don't know with the old school tracks whether it's really a problem. But hey, it was a massive disappointment for Lando, but he made up for it in the race, didn't he?
He did, yeah, because he just drove brilliantly in the race. Obviously it was very difficult because it was very wet in places and bone dry in others, and he didn't really put a foot wrong, did he?
Yeah,
he outdrove Ricciardo, so the team moved him out of the way.
I was going to say, politely asked the team and said, "I'm faster, but I can't show you what I'm capable of because of dirty air, basically." And I'm always a bit funny about them swapping drivers around and things. But I do understand until the rules change properly, which is for next year, there's so much dirty air on these cars that it is hard. People do get stuck. So unless you have a little bit of an edge in other ways, I think, especially in the same car, it's quite hard to get past.
Well, there's no DRS at that point because it was still wet.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that was a big talking point, and he actually finished He finished third, didn't he, in the end?
He finished third in the end, yeah.
So mega happy for him. That was a big talking point. So what else then was there?
Well, the other thing was the person that drove brilliantly, though he made a bit of a mistake at a restart, was Max.
Oh yeah, so he was pretty much faultless apart from that one bit.
Yes, which he was laughing about afterwards because he got away with it. But
and it was literally on the restart, just started to just try and warm the tyres up and go. And the rear end just snapped into oversteer. The problem is on a race car like that, full lock, that's it. It's half a turn. And if you haven't got it instantly, you're not going to get it. And he only just hung on to it. And because it hadn't officially started yet, Leclerc, the driver behind, had to wait.
Yes, and that kind of screwed him up a little bit because then Norris got past him, didn't he?
Absolutely. So it helped out Norris in the end. Lucky boy for Max.
Yeah, but the big talking point really was lap 32. What Toto Wolff must have thought on lap 32, because that was the lap that Hamilton lapped Russell and understeered off the road.
Yes, yeah.
But he managed to reverse it back across the gravel.
Yeah.
And make it out to the pits. In the meantime, Russell dropped it and smashed straight into the side of Bottas.
Yeah, now I think there's two things there. So with the cars that are being lapped, when it's wet with a dry line, that's a real tricky one.
Yeah.
Because normally,
nobody was trying to say it was anybody else's. Nobody was blaming anybody.
No, but as long as you normally slow, give space, so basically you don't impede the driver who needs to come through. It's no problem. However, though, there is that argument in the wet. So what really happened is basically George Russell stayed on the driving line and slowed a bit to let Lewis through, but that meant Lewis had to go down the inside on the wet tarmac on slicks. So he just started to try brake,
he couldn't get it stopped, that's what he said.
Yeah, exactly. He couldn't get it stopped, pushed on, and then the back swung round, and then he just caught the edge of the barrier, didn't he?
Yeah.
But he still thinks so quickly on his feet, so he's apologising to the team, but he's getting it in reverse. And the reason he wanted to reverse it out is because you don't get as much torque. So you're less likely to spin up the wheels and end up dug into the gravel.
Yeah, so it becomes a front-wheel drive car, and you just
exactly.
pull yourself out.
Yeah, absolutely. So he thought really on his feet there. He was obviously really disappointed with himself, but he actually dealt with it unbelievably well.
Well, I mean, it was game over really at that point, because by the time he'd been in and stopped and changed his nose, he was then a lap behind.
Yeah.
But fortunately for him, I mean, when they've analysed it now, a lot of the drivers have come out and said that this really was George Russell's fault. But essentially, he was trying to pass under DRS. He got DRS Bottas, and he says that Bottas jinked out towards him. But all the footage I've seen of it, Valtteri, if anything, moved away from him.
Yeah, because all it is,
you heard Russell get a load of wheel spin and just turn hard left.
Yeah,
huge shunt.
I think when George Russell watches all the different angles on both cars, onboards, data, I think he will realise that honestly, Valtteri did not jink really hard right at all. All he was doing, if you look at, because of course they famously say the straight's never straight. So he's just gradually curving, isn't he?
He was following the dry line. You could see he was following the dry line.
And of course the car behind wanting to overtake, needs to make a clean overtake. Now, of course, if Valtteri then suddenly violently moved and caused an incident, that's different. But that's not what happened. It looked very much to me that Russell has so much extra momentum, and
of course he's got the DRS, so there's less rear weight. You know, the back end of the car's light all of a sudden because the DRS is open, and he just spun the wheels.
And I think he just thought, I can get through there. Oh no, perhaps I can't. And I think he thought it'd be all right if he touched the grass a little. And obviously, no way was that.
And with full wing, he probably would have been.
Yeah, and it just spun up the wheels, and it just fired him hard left into the side of Valtteri. But that's a very quick part of the track. So they both went off incredibly hard. Luckily, they were both okay. That's the main thing. But yeah, I was surprised in Russell. I know what it's like as a racing driver, being very pumped up, an accident happening, a load of adrenaline going. It's easy to go over and point your finger and, have a moan and the rest of it. But I do think Russell, in future, hopefully will learn, especially at that level, you need to really wait and see all the evidence first before you point fingers, and also make sure Valtteri's okay, because at that point you had no idea Valtteri was
winded.
Okay.
Because Valtteri was barrier twice very hard.
And Valtteri wasn't getting out of the car. So I think there's a couple of things, and a lot of the F1 drivers now are sort of more leaning towards, not that they want to blame, but to learn from it, let's say, is perhaps Russell needs to learn from that more than anybody. But of course, if you guys have different views or perspectives, still write in, let us know what you think.
Let us know what you think,
because it's always nice to have a debate with people. Everybody has their different takes on it. But yeah, so that made it interesting. But the main thing is
that was a reset then, obviously, because then Lewis got his lap back.
Yeah.
But the Ferraris apparently had deliberately put more downforce on the car on Saturday because they knew it was going to be wet. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting pretty. Certainly Leclerc was sitting pretty because he was in second and he got a good... Nobody was going to catch him at that point, because then complete reset. Yeah. They were then sitting ducks, which is Norris dropped Leclerc at the start, and I mean, a good result for Ferrari in the end, finishing 4th and 5th. But...
Yeah, it wasn't that bad, and it was great for Sainz, because anybody who's watched it will know that Sainz was really struggling at the start of that race, and he sort of found his feet with it in the end. It looked like everybody kept saying, that he needed to play around with the brake bias more, because he kept locking the fronts
wheels up,
so easily that he needed to move the brake bias towards the back. Whether he ended up doing that and then felt more happy, because then he started to actually close in on Leclerc, didn't he?
Yeah.
At one point towards the end. But yeah, so it was a really interesting race, and kind of hopefully highlights to people how exciting Formula 1 can be, because it's like in qualifying. What was it? The top 8 were covered by 4/10.
Yeah.
Now I know we've got other formulas like IndyCar and all sorts where the top, what is it, 17, 18,
something like that, covered by 4/10.
Yeah, so it's a bit different. But if you think for this for Formula 1, they've all got different, chassis. Everything is vastly different. Budgets, even though they try budget cap, it's all still different though, isn't it? So to get it that close this season is a really good sign that hopefully we're in for a really exciting season. Today we had 3 different drivers from 3 different teams on the podium, and that's what people want to see. Is as much as a lot of people love Lewis and respect Lewis as a driver, it is just nice to mix it up and see others doing well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is,
and not knowing who's going to win, and it felt like that today.
Yes,
I would say at Imola, and hopefully if we can have that when it's not wet as well, then they know, that's going to be the game changer.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. But so that's kind of the main points. The only other obvious talking point here is Mazepin.
I mean, when after the restart, after about 15 laps, something, he was 40 seconds behind Schumacher.
Yeah. And
that's running on a dry track. That's pathetic.
That's the only driver really you can compare him to, because they're in the Haas. We know the Haas hasn't been developed this year. They've decided it. I don't really understand the strategy in some respects, because they've decided they're going to invest nothing this year, and they're investing fully behind the scenes for their 2023 car, which is it or 2022 car? Yeah. Sorry. Getting lost in my years.
You've lost a year.
2022 car. So you think, okay, I get that, the resources, putting it into that. But the only thing is, that means now the car they've currently got is so far behind and undrivable, and they've got 2 young rookies in it. And I just think it's.
I think
they're
Schumacher
spending a lot of money.
Yes.
And not going to really get much out of this at all, really.
But I think Schumacher's doing a good job.
Oh,
he wasn't far behind Giovinazzi. I mean, the Haas is not, not as good as the Alfa, I don't think.
Yeah, we know the Haas is.
But it's just Mazepin. It's like, what's that all about?
Yeah, because the one thing I would say with Schumacher, watching him in the free practices on Friday and Saturday, is he's driving well.
He's driving well.
You can see how well he's driving, how quick. He would make mistakes like Mazepin, but he'd be on top of it so quickly. Whereas Mazepin is so behind the car all the time.
Just keeps spinning and going off.
And this is where money will get you that far, but actually you've still got to be able to perform. You're now being measured when you get to the top, aren't you? Well and truly being measured. And when you're out there on your own doing the job, it comes down then to your skill set, doesn't it?
It does,
Can you do that and achieve that? And I've probably been quite hard on Stroll in the past, but Stroll did a hell of a lot better job.
He did a good job today, actually, Stroll. He's just not consistent enough, Stroll.
Yeah,
and he's never going to be, Lewis, is he?
No, I don't think so. But I feel he's had far more opportunities than some of the drivers to. Like, I know he invested and bought like a Williams for a year, like from previous year, so they could just go and test all year all their own, do things that most drivers don't get chance to do before they come in. But he seems to be improving all the time, and you think, well, to be fair, he looks confident, he's getting the results, he's getting consistent. So you think, he's
becoming pretty solid.
And
really,
he was
Stroll.
Never like Mazepin at the start, was he?
No, he wasn't.
So
he's just out of his depth.
So I think though it does show really, to get a super license, to be in Formula One, you need to have finished or won certain categories.
Yeah, you do. Well, you have to get the right number of points, don't you?
Yeah,
to get
but like it's going
license.
to have to be tougher, isn't it? Because if people like Mazepin, we've seen it before, haven't we? People are getting in there, and I know.
Julian Palmer was another one.
Well, I won't mention names of who told me because it's a fairly big name, but he said he reckoned no more than 2 years in Formula 2, and he's in Formula 1. He's a big boss. He said anybody that has to do more than 2 years in Formula 2 or Formula 3, forget it. You're not good enough, but not for that level, basically, because they're looking for people that can win it in the first year, or certainly be super dominant in a second year. That kind of thing. So so I wonder if things may change there, really, but we'll see. So we've also had part of the IndyCar,
so started tonight, first round of the IndyCars.
So we've got
Motorsport Park.
We've had qualifying.
It's a bit like Cadwell by the looks of it.
But we've had qualifying though, right?
We've had qualifying, Pato O'Ward's on pole, who was briefly a Red Bull driver, but he's now a McLaren driver. So he came over here and did a couple of Formula 2 races, and he went to Japan, did a few races. He's phenomenal talent, Pato O'Ward. So he's gone back to his spiritual home, which is IndyCar, and stuck it on pole.
Which is
Alex
great.
Rossi next to him on the front row.
Well, one thing, I don't know how many of you guys listening and watching watch IndyCar, but we can get it on Sky F1 channel. I'm sure there's other ways of getting it as well, I assume.
I guess so.
But honestly, it is worth it. You're seeing more and more, like it used to happen really, you're seeing a lot more ex-F1 drivers moving over to it. Some really big names in there, and it's like watching old school Formula 1, I would say. Like with less aero, lots of power,
they
traditional
move around
tracks.
All the time, don't they?
Yes, you can see they're working incredibly hard. It's unbelievably close, and the tracks themselves, well, they vary for a start, don't they? Because you've got street circuits,
road
circuits. You've got then ovals,
big ovals, little ovals.
So you've got to adapt to a lot. And I'd say anybody who's a bit of a petrol head and likes their motorsport, if they haven't really given IndyCar a go, honestly, give it a go. And maybe start with a street circuit or something that's a bit more familiar, and you'll start to really see what it's all about and get into it. But
you've got to be good to win that championship.
Oh yeah, so a few rookie big names have come into it.
Yes,
haven't they?
So Grosjean, fresh from his fire.
So of course he's probably the biggest name for most people. And to be fair, he was doing great in qualifying.
Yeah, I think it'll suit him because he was always good. F3, F2. He did some of the other single make Formula on his way up to F1.
Yeah.
And he was dominant in all of those.
Yeah.
I think it'll really suit him. But of course, IndyCar is a higher level than it's an equivalent to F1 in terms of driver quality, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've obviously got people like Dixon, you've got people like Rossi.
Yeah.
Then you've got, like we've mentioned in a few of our pods, Scott McLaughlin, the Aussie V8 driver.
Yeah, who's now come into this.
Yeah, he was on fire.
Yeah.
Wasn't as quick as Grosjean, to be fair, but he was putting some good laps in.
Oh yeah.
And probably the biggest name, but he's not a name in Europe, is Jimmy Johnson's gone in there. But I think he's gone into it because he's 45. He's a 7-time NASCAR champion.
That's it,
You know, and that's hard to be. It's hard to be a NASCAR champion once.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't know much about NASCAR at all.
Yeah, it's
being brutally
hard because they do like 40 rounds or something, don't they? And it's all this pack racing where they're all together, and you've got to get your strategies right now. So it's hard to be a champion. He's won it 7 times.
Yeah.
And I think he's gone to IndyCar because he's always fancied doing it, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, why not? Why not?
Absolutely. And his big thing is he just doesn't want to be last.
Yeah. But you might find he'll start to pick this up quite quickly.
I bet he'll be good on the ovals.
You know, and he'll start to work it out. Cause, like,
as long as he doesn't start trying to bump people, because he can't really do that in IndyCar.
But it's fairly known, isn't it? Anybody that goes from IndyCar to NASCAR, NASCAR to IndyCar, there does seem to be a transitional period, doesn't there?
Yeah, because it's hard.
Because I think it's very different.
When Dario Franchitti went, he went from IndyCar to NASCAR for I think he did it for a year, and he says it was so hard because you'd be half a tenth off, and you'd be 20th.
Yeah,
and like, how am I going to find that? That's an immeasurable amount of time, and he was like 20th.
Yeah,
and he's like, well, this is hard.
Yeah, and that's what you're up against, isn't it? Well, not that I know loads about NASCAR, but so there's loads we could educate people on various different ones. But
it's hard to get NASCAR in this country, though, to watch.
Yeah, and that's the thing with some of the stuff you'll notice we'll be talking about. The Formula 1, is more accessible, a bit more obvious, but that's why we're going to try and promote IndyCar and the GT World Challenge Championship and other things, just to show you what else is out there.
Yeah, there's more to life than Formula 1.
You know, and
Formula 1's part of the family, and we love Formula 1, but there is
so much, and you'll recognise so many major names and all these other things. And sometimes, being honest, the racing is better than Formula 1 by a long way sometimes. So it's definitely worth a look anyway. Yeah. So, I suppose, moving on for now, is road cars.
Yes.
Isn't it? So the week of road cars. So what have you found out this week?
What have I found out?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot going on at Lotus. Lotus have always got big plans. I always worry about Lotus because they've had so many owners and they keep getting pushed and chopped about. And I mean, people were saying they hardly sell any cars.
Well, such a shame. Is they've produced some amazing cars, haven't they? Without really at times that much of a budget and resources. So I think, and obviously they go way back, don't they? They have a huge history, Lotus.
Yes.
But in more recent years,
they were the British Ferrari. They were.
Exactly.
Colin Chapman built road cars to pay for his racing, which is exactly what Ferrari did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited for this. I know they've had other CEOs and ownerships before, but I am excited for this because this what's his name, Matt Windle, has a fairly different kind of view, I think, perhaps to what they've done before. They've already spoken about how they are going to start pretty immediately building prototypes. They're not looking at hybrids. Yeah, they're going straight into full electric.
And the one I was at Goodwood last year, I was fortunate enough to go to Speed Week.
Yeah.
Because it's all behind closed doors. But I was lucky enough to go with Porsche. But they had one there, and it looked $1 million.
Yeah.
Really did look cool.
Well, that's the thing. So it's going to be the first road car they've built in 12 years. Is that right?
So I guess what would the last one be? The Europa or something?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, all the lease-based kind of chassis, but they've stopped all that now, haven't they?
Yeah, which is a surprise.
Yeah.
But I guess it shows it's a time of change, isn't
and
it?
then they thought, right, we've got an opportunity here to follow a different path.
Yeah, absolutely. Rather than keep trying to... I understand wanting to keep to your roots and what you've achieved, but actually things do evolve. Now, you can bring some of that back in, can't you? But sometimes you need quite a different model. I mean, we've seen it with Porsche over the years, haven't we?
Yeah.
Reinvent themselves in certain ways, and then their traditional stuff they bring back, and that becomes one of their kind of, I don't know, what would you call it? One of their most iconic, I suppose.
Yeah. But the Lotus's problem is that they're trying to compete with people like Porsche and people like Mercedes-Benz, and they can't do that. And I think they thought, right, we need to go a different way with this.
Absolutely, and the only way they can is, like you say, focusing on a slightly different market, but also making it cheaper.
Yeah,
that's the only other way.
Because that's the thing, is they were a lot of money. Like an Elise was 40 grand. You know.
And the problem is now when you've got things like
MX-5 was 20.
Yeah. That's the thing, is if it's going to be expensive, we've got very used to having very high-end quality now, whether it's interiors, reliability, just in general, whatever it is, however expensive or not, we've got used to that quality. And I think that's where Lotus fell down a little bit, is they were great drivers' cars, but the quality wasn't quite there.
No.
But they were quite expensive. And then you get other things come on the market that are also really good sports cars, that are the same price and 10 times more a car, you know. And I think that's where they've got to change.
That's a difficult sell then, isn't it? And that's why they weren't selling cars. Because if you looked at an Evora and then went and looked at a Cayman, you know, you need your bumps ready if you bought the really, you know, because you've got so much more car.
Well, until Cayman changed the engine, that is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Porsche, because I love you very much. But no, it's horses for courses, obviously. And we're certainly not dissing Lotus. Actually, I love Lotuses and always have. And I've driven many a Exige and Elise and Evora. They're great cars, but it'd be nice to see them back, really, and growing again as a brand.
Yeah,
you know?
so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, let's see where it goes.
But their problem then is the next thing you're going to move on to is BMW's electrification. You know, and now the M department is getting involved with BMW iCars.
Absolutely.
You think, right, okay, this will be a game changer, because now we're going to get more affordable drivers' electric cars.
Absolutely.
So not Taycans from the grand.
That's what needs to happen, basically. So you've got the little runarounds that are great for in cities and things. So for people that perhaps aren't that into cars, but they need a mode of transport which is user-friendly, eco-friendly, and the rest of it. So you've got that market, and then you've got obviously the guys with the supercars and sports cars,
mega amounts of money,
doing their bit.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not just about eco-friendly; it's also about performance stuff. So everything costs a lot of money. So what BMW I think are trying to do is the more everyday but fun exotic version.
Yes.
But at
so
a
M2,
cheaper
M3.
price.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So because my understanding is the i3 and the i8 never really sold very well.
No.
There's always been a bit of a flop, which I'm surprised, certainly with the
i3.
i3.
The i3 was a brilliant car.
Yeah, so I'm a bit surprised there. But this is from the sources and you know, talking to people at BMW, that seems to be what we're told anyway. But the new i4 that's coming out, I think they have promising hopes for that. But they want to get the M team involved in that, so then suddenly it can become a 600 horsepower M4i as such.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So then you've got the electric power, and of course the M branding and everything that comes with that, with the suspension and excitement. And then suddenly you can rival people like Taycan, but it will be cheaper.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden that's a game changer. And of course the same with the M2. They're talking about the same thing, aren't they? So having an M2, which is an iM2.
Yeah.
Which will be just one hell of a beast, basically.
Cool little thing, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of power, you know, quite a special bit of kit. Because obviously electric is going to be a part of our future. We've discussed already whether it will be the full future. We know Porsche are looking at synthetic fuels. Looks like Formula 1 getting involved. But I really do still think there will always be a place for electric. And obviously manufacturers feel that enough to be pushing so hard this direction.
And they've learned a lot already, won't they, about it?
Absolutely. You know, and I think another bit is, you know, just getting these batteries as light as possible to produce as much power as possible, effectively as possible, so it lasts longer. You know, it's all that kind of stuff, which we're getting there with. But it's interesting to see how BMW are really embracing that. But they don't want to just go for the run-of-the-mill iCars. They want them to be sexy and sporty as well, to really challenge people like Tesla and Porsche and others. So yeah,
it's good to see, actually.
Watch this space.
Because I've always said you don't want to be frightened of electric cars, because people like BMW will build some cool electric cars.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's, you know, you can see them.
I like the i8. I thought the i8 was a cracking car. I know it's not for everybody, but I thought for its time That was a really cool
it was,
car, and it
they were
handled
brave to
really
do that,
well.
BMW.
It looked good. It was a bit different.
Yeah.
For me, I thought that was an awesome car. But yeah, we'll see. So I have a lot of faith in that, actually. And what, anybody who's looking at an electric car or a very good hybrid, I think I think BMW are certainly going to be a brand to
it'd be good to watch.
To look at. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So then moving on to something completely not like that.
I was looking at your list here. Yeah.
So we tested. So each week we've been testing various vehicles. And we tested the Ferrari 488 Pista. Now, I have to really eat my words here because I drove a 488 Ferrari at Hockenheim, and unfortunately it kept going into limp mode. So I just didn't fall in love with it.
You didn't gel with it.
Whereas the 458, I felt like, wow, Ferrari have got their personality back. They're back. Because they went through a period, and this is my own personal opinion, a period where, for me, they just weren't quite right. Not everything quite fitted together as such. Then the 458 came out, and it felt exciting, edgy, sounded great, looked great. The quality was better, everything. So I was dead excited about this 488, and of course limp mode and things, and I wasn't sure. But that said, we then drove and met somebody who we know who kindly has loaned us the 488 Pista, and I was pretty blown away by the car.
What a bit of kit.
Yeah.
And I think you said one of the, and it's not the thing you think you'd hear yourself saying, one of the things that really blew us away was the ride.
Yeah.
Because it rode like a Bentley.
I couldn't believe it, because
they were not joking. It was like
doing
a magic carpet.
Basically doing a lot. Well, you've done a lot with Bentley. I've done a lot with Porsche and brands, and McLaren and people, and I kind of thought it would feel like a McLaren, really.
Yeah, like a skateboard.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. But what was amazing is it was able to adapt the suspension so well that it was really floaty when you wanted it to be, and then hard as nails and tight and rigid when you wanted it to be. So all of a sudden, this car that I would never imagine to drive on the road much suddenly seems completely accessible on the road.
Yeah.
So, of course, on track, you expect it to be edgy, exciting, make you smile,
you're expecting
all that kind of stuff.
You're expecting it to be fast and sharp, and it was.
Yeah,
what we didn't expect was it to ride the way that it
absolutely
was incredible.
And even the quality, I have to admit, because the quality of the interiors, they've always had a lot of flair, but the actual quality, it's like they've still got that flair and excitement of making it look like a piece of art. They've still got that.
Yes.
But the quality feels even more solid.
Yeah.
As well, that's the other thing. I think 488 Pistas for me is a complete game changer, and it's quite exciting to see, where Ferrari are going next with what's coming out. So I really think they're getting stronger and stronger again as a brand. Really. Yeah. So I mean, with the Pista, did you have any thoughts yourself on?
I mean, I guess it's GT2 RS kind of McLaren 720.
Yes.
Competitor, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know GT2 RS is the one I know and more familiar with. Is a monster of a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I didn't feel it was as intimidating as a GT2 RS.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you mean. Because this is 700 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
It's 4-litre V8.
Yeah.
They're fastest for V8 that they've produced within Ferrari. And actually, the client traded in his GT2 RS for this car, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And I remember beforehand thinking, "Gosh, why have you done that?" The GT2 RS is an immense car.
Yeah, it's a special car. But this is a very special car.
Absolutely. But then driving it in the Pista, I suddenly thought, you know what? I can see it now.
Yeah, I can get what those cars
I
about.
never ever thought I would say that, being honest, being so loyal to Porsche. I never thought that. But you know what? They've made it a piece of art where you can see the engine. Well, that's one thing manufacturers missed the trick now. You can never see the engine.
I mean, Porsche engines always look like washing machines anyway. There was never much to see. But
whereas it's on show. It sounds fabulous. It rides well. I mean, with the Pista bit, I don't know if you want to explain, because obviously that's a little bit different to the normal 488.
Yeah, well, it's like a GT3, isn't it? It's a stripped out, lightened.
Yeah.
The engine's a little bit is sharper and has things done to it. So it's kind of it's a track car in effect. It's just, it's got all the trick bits to make it go around a track.
Absolutely, bells and whistles on it included in that way. Things like ceramic brakes and all sorts of stuff.
A bit more downforce, a bit less weight. All
it has a bigger rear wing.
Stuff,
yeah, absolutely, more downforce. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Cup tyres.
Noisier.
A lightweight battery as well.
Oh yeah, it's all important. It means I can have another lunch.
Stuff, so yeah. Well, I'm not sure about that, but So I'm just really excited with Ferrari to see what they're really coming out with next, because I've always loved Ferrari from a young girl, and
I just wish they'd do a manual. I wish they'd do what all the manufacturers are thinking. Right, okay, we could do with a really cool little manual car now.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of, whether you call them purists or what, that want that. And okay, I know as a percentage there'll be more that want paddle shift, but I do think, for me, on the road, I'd rather a manual any day of the week. And it's not because I want to go blitzing around really fast. It's just I like the added
interaction with the car. Yeah.
Exactly. Being able to do hill and tow and all that kind of stuff, and enjoy it really, because I can't drive quickly on the road. Whereas actually on the track, I'm the opposite. I want a paddle shift car.
Totally,
because it's quicker, it's easier, I can left foot brake, do all these other things. So it's almost the opposite of what people expect me to say in a way. But yeah, I know it's horses for courses with autos, and if you're using a car a lot with traffic and things, I know the auto is easier. But I don't think the Pista is that sort of car anyway.
No.
So yeah, so it would be great if they did an option, but I don't know if they ever will, to be honest.
No.
I never get that impression with them.
I just think it'd be a nice thing to do. But,
So anyway, so on that note, we're testing some more exciting cars, some very vast, different old and new cars coming up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
So we'll gradually talk about that on the podcast as well as release videos on the YouTube channel anyway.
Yeah.
So you can watch that gradually as we go. So we thought we'd just do another bit on our little driving gem part. As people seem to really enjoy that, but we want to try and make it a bit more sexy after our whole seat position.
Yeah.
I think we did left foot braking last week, to be fair, to make it a bit better.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd talk about oversteer. Now, oversteer is a bit of a tricky one to talk about, because I do think it's best to demonstrate it and get people behind the wheel and go through it stage at a time. But of course we can't do that here. So right now we're just going to work with what we got and just try and explain it.
We try and explain it. We'll use words.
What we will do at some point is do a video on oversteer, where we're getting it right and getting it wrong, and the differences and the kind of do's and don'ts as such. And then we'll do one on understeer as well. So yeah, gradually build that in. So oversteer then, Rich. What is oversteer?
So it's a rear wheel skid essentially. Mm-hmm. So it's called oversteer because the car turns more dramatically than the amount of steering you've asked it, so it oversteers.
Yeah, so overreacts.
But it's the back wheel skidding, essentially, trying to overtake the front.
Okay, so when you're teaching people, what are the kind of main key points do you give them?
The first thing is to look where you want to go. So people say steer into the skid, or put opposite lock on and all that kind of thing. But essentially what you're trying to do is point the front wheels where you want the car to go.
Absolutely. And I do think I've found many people get confused with steering to a skid, because people are like, well, which way's that, huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, you want to simplify it, because in a real situation you do not have long to think about it, and you don't have much time. That's the thing. So you're absolutely right. It really comes down to initially vision, where you're looking.
Look where you want to go, not where you're going.
Absolutely. So the common mistake is people panic and they look towards the tree because they don't want to hit the tree, which all makes sense. But if you look at the tree without realising, the chances are you're going to steer yourself straight towards that point like a target and hit it. Whereas if you actually look where you want to go, so further down the road or further around the car, whatever the situation is, and aim for that point and steer towards that point, you are still effectively steering into the skid.
You are,
aren't you? But you're not thinking of it like that.
And you put the right amount of steering on if you do that, rather than thinking, well, how much do I need? If you just think, well, I want to go over there, you'll put the right amount of steering on without too much thought then.
Absolutely. It suddenly becomes so much more logical. Now, of course, when we do more advanced stuff, then you want to develop it with feel, don't you, as well? because I do think
no
that's
substitute for
important.
practice like anything else.
Absolutely, and understanding more about feeling when to get the wheels straight again. Obviously, reacting quickly when you're looking where you want to go, steer there. But once you think, right, I've got hold of the car, it's just as important to straighten all back up again and then try physically
because of what comes
get there.
next. Yes,
absolutely. Now, we want to keep this really simple for today because we'll do a proper video on it, won't we? So all we'd say to start with oversteer is if you ever find yourself in any form of trouble, is look only where you want to go, like a target, and try and physically get there, I would say.
Yes.
Is the key parts. But what would
you...
you...
takeaway, really.
Yeah. What would you add to that without making it too complicated? Because I know we have a risk of this sat here saying too much, but is there anything else you'd add to that at this stage?
I don't know that there is. I mean, modern cars with modern ABS systems used to be, don't press the brakes. Modern ABS systems actually, excuse me, can help, but I'm not saying that you should brake. You know, the steering is the absolute key thing.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, if you get things like rear-wheel drive cars, you know, you can put more throttle on, well, that can make it worse. Take throttle off, that can make it worse. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry about any of those things as a starting point.
Yes.
And just get the vision and steering where you want the car to go.
Absolutely. And it's okay to steer however you need to steer.
Yeah, don't worry about how pretty it looks.
Yeah, or trying to keep your hands in one position or anything like that. Yeah, just whatever gets that steering on quickly.
Yes.
And gets it off quickly.
Use your elbows if that works.
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
matter.
It doesn't matter. So what we'll probably do is break that down into sort of stages rather than try and do the whole thing today. So start with that little gem, and then we'll go into a little bit more about then other points that you know during oversteer, other little things you need to think about. And then eventually we could then talk about your feet. What do you do with your feet? Because there's a bit more variety there depending on the situation and the type of car you're in. But we'll gradually cover it. But yeah, just to start with, think of it like that really. Always look where you want to go. Try and avoid looking at the thing that you don't want to hit.
and obviously at some point we're running some courses, aren't we? We're trying to get together some places we can take people to.
Yeah, we want to do dynamic.
Because there's no substitute for doing it.
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, okay, we do our normal track stuff, road stuff, but we also want to do a lot of dynamic stuff because one thing for sure, most clients, when you say, what do you want to get out of this? Most people will say, well, I'd really like to understand car control.
Yeah.
Because, of course, it's the one thing that holds people back, whether it's on the road, track, whatever, it makes people nervous because they don't know how it feels or how to respond to it.
Yeah.
So we are going to do some courses on that as well. So, of course, if you're interested in anything like that, just drop us a line. But any questions on what we've spoken about with any of this, feel free to drop us a line or even give us your views on Formula One or IndyCar or any other sports you might have been watching. It could be MotoGP, it doesn't matter. So we've got our interactive question, haven't we, at the end here. So do you want me to say it? Or
you asked me, yes, I don't know what you've put.
Oh, really? Okay. So if you could take a road trip anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? And what car would you use?
That's a very good question. I think I would like to I'd like to drive from one end of New Zealand to the other.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting you to say that for some reason. Okay.
Just because people tell me it's like going back in time. It's like going back to England in the 50s.
Is
people
it?
Tell me, yeah. And you can drive for 200 miles and not see another car. I don't know what car I was going to say a Morris Minor, but I'm not sure whether you'd get fed up with that fairly quickly.
Well, when it breaks down continuously,
yeah,
you're not going to get very
absolutely, yeah. And your back's hurting and the clutch is gone. And so what car would I do that in? So I think something cruisy and convertible, something like a Mercedes SL or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're so disappointing.
People like Mercedes SLs.
Yeah, oh no, I'm sure they do. Just I don't. No, I'm only joking. Okay, so I've not really thought about this. So, okay, road trip.
You come up with the question, but you haven't thought
No,
about it.
can you tell? Road trip around anywhere in the world. Where would it be and why? I'm going to say something really obvious, but it's only because I've done it. But I did it for work, and I would love to do it for pleasure. And that is to do a road trip from Seattle, so in America, north on the West Coast side, north to south, down to Texas, and back up towards sort of Vegas. So doing all West Coast side, because it's unbelievably pretty. It's very, very diverse. There's so much, I don't know, you've just got everything there, really, that you could possibly dream of. So, and the roads are so much better than I thought, because people always tell me, oh, American roads, they're not drivers' roads. And I found some great roads on the West Coast with great views and thought it was brilliant. Yeah, there's some places that aren't like that, but a lot of it was. So for me, that would be the place. And why is because I've been there for work, but I'd love to go and just do it in my own time as part of a pleasure thing and stop exactly where I want to stop and really take it all in and end up in Texas and be a cowgirl for a few days and then go up to Vegas or something like that. Car wise, because it's America, it would have to be a muscle car. There's no doubt about that. Which muscle car is hard. So they recently released that Mustang thing, GT. No, it wasn't a Mustang GTC, was it? You know, they did a thing. I don't even remember what it's called now. It had a crazy amount of horsepower, and like a motorsport team built it.
I've no idea.
Any build?
Not in the slightest, no.
Okay. I'm sure Nick will tell me
but
what this is afterwards.
Yeah.
No. Oh, wow, let's scrap that then. Okay, a Corvette.
Yeah, there we go. I knew we'd get there eventually.
Probably a Stingray Corvette or something like that. Something fun, exciting. Yeah, because I don't think I'd have a convertible one because, well, I just think in America on that side, well, it depends what time of year you go, but it's too hot. Yeah. For convertibles, but so anyway, we'd love to hear from you. So of course, let us know your favourite road trip, where you'd like to go and why, and what car you pick as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else? Any questions? Just shout. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. That'd be great, and we'll get more content on for next week.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.